It's not that easy being green. Are environmentalist groups really about the environment? Whilst we all suspect that it is the squeaky wheels who get the grease, sometimes we need to ask what kind of grease and who is actually getting oiled. The stated agenda for an organisation is one thing, but the behaviour of some groups seems to be about something else entirely, especially around election time. Take the Green Movement. As the truism goes, and it is already a truism, we are all environmentalists now. We need to be. The problem is that many environmentalists don't seem to want us all to be environmentalists. From where I stand, and forgive me if I get political party here, but I am an LNP supporter. So that is where I stand. The major agenda of much of the Green Movement appears to be propped up in the Labour Party and the Greens and put down the Liberals. But before you rush to man, the barricades in disagreeing with me, take a typical example. The anti-nuclear protests marched to Sydney French consulate on Bastille Day 1995. I counted at least 8 LNP members present, far more than any political party in fact, more than all the other political parties put together as far as I could see. Yet, when it came to speeches, the Greens and the Labour both got a Guernsey, and the LNP was ignored, except for Peter Garrett, who commented, "Even the Liberals are here." Even. For his information, I was an environmentalist when it was both unfashionable and expensive. Back in the days when dinosaurs roamed the earth, my husband and I were struggling young farmers in northwest New South Wales. Where our neighbours were using chemicals such as DDT, we refused. The alternatives were much more costly financially, but already the known effects of the cheaper options were for us too dreadful to contemplate. Then a nursing sister from Wee-Waa came to me with information about the destructiveness of the chemicals being used in the developing cotton industry. Consequences range from the extermination of native wildlife, particularly birds and fish, to a massive increase in respiratory illnesses in young children. So began my campaign against those chemicals. Apart from my personal habitat of being a vote against the current orthodoxy, I believed, and still do, that the natural environment matters. Air, water, and earth are fundamental to life. The diversity of species is a priceless resource that needs to be treasured, and the fragility of ecosystems needs to be respected. I don't share those personal snippets as some major achievement, which they are not. The point is that I'm an LNP member, and that there are many more of us who feel just as strongly about the environment, to say nothing about the substantial number of people who do not belong to any political party and want to be environmentalists without having to perform knee-jerk obeisances to left-wing politics. Amongst those most vociferously opposed to the GST at the 1993 federal election was the Green Movement. Yet, by taxing spending and thus discouraging consumption, waste, and the pillaging of resources, a GST would have been an environmental plus. The move by the Queensland Greens in the 1995 state election to allocate preferences on environmental grounds rather than automatically supporting Labour should have strengthened their credibility. Oddly, much of the media commentary on this decision claimed that the opposite. In an article by Craig Skean about acrimony over the Greens turning on Labour in Queensland, the political scientist Dr. Clive Bean expressed concern that the voters might question the wisdom of environmental activists shedding altruism for hardball political wheeling and dealing. Oh, come on, Dr. Bean. The Greens are a political party. What else do you expect them to do? Knit? Says Bean. The Greens, in terms of maintaining their own credibility, will need to be cautious about doing deals. Particularly incensed was the Australian Conservation Foundation, which charged that it was really part of a cynical plot. Geez, and I thought conspiracy theories were an extreme right-wing aberration. The argument from the Greens that the coalition had more environmentally sound policies, especially in some seats, seemed to not matter at all. Dr. Bean and the Conservation Foundation did not explain why supporting more environmentally sound policies would cost the Greens their credibility. Yet, given what we're told comes from a media not overly critical of leftist assertions, It will probably come as a surprise to most Australians to be told that Labour is no gift to the environment, and Liberal governments have a strong record in this area. Labour has done a little about soil and water degradation, arguably the two most important environmental issues in Australia. On the other side of the political fence, the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park, the Kakadu and Uluru National Parks, the Christmas Island National Park, and the Marine Park reserves in the Coral Sea were all established by the Liberal governments, says Chris Puplik. Malcolm Fraser saved Fraser Island, and, like former Minister Sir Garfield Barwick, was a founding member of the Australian Conservation Foundation. Puplik includes a lengthy list of federal Liberal government environmental protection legislation and initiatives in his book, Is the Party Over? The coalition government, of which I was a member of in New South Wales, had a very strong record of environmental achievements. The Environmental Protection Authority, 16 new national parks, tougher air and water emission standards, better sewage treatment, and the highest environmental expenditure per person in Australia, amongst other things. Fat lot of good they did, all of us, as the environmental lobby continued to savage us and fawn all over Labour. The Liberals in the early 1980s fell flat on their faces over the Franklin Dam. The Green movement embraced Labour at the time, and it has never let go. This has left the rest of us out in the cold, and in the case of the Liberals, with no political incentive to pursue policies for which we have been given no credit or support, and every incentive to cover up with the slash and burners. Mind you, I would not want to be identified with the extremist tree huggers who think that technology is all bad and that human beings are an excrescence on nature. The bottom line for those greenies is that most of us should die. This philosophy is taken to its logical conclusion in the science fiction novel Fallen Angels, where Larry Niven and his friends envisage human decimation because of the anti-technology paranoia of a green government. Whether one is on the left or the right side of the politics is not necessarily relevant to caring for the environment. It is time that the environmental organisations that so fiercely oppose the move by the Queensland Greens ask whether it is really in their own interest to continue alienating and deliberately excluding a substantial constituency. Unless, of course, the agenda of their office holders is not the environment at all. One final question. Why doesn't the media see through all this hypocrisy and expose it? Or at least give space to those who can and will?